Let's go. I'll go to court. Look at them already taking all my money. Let's go again.
Because the more I get close to politics and be around politicians and kind of see behind the veil of politics, number one, it's all narrative control.
Yep.
All politics is how can you control the messaging and the narrative at that moment. And the longer you can control the narrative, the higher probability that you have to win.
You know what's interesting you said about narrative control? We talk about the fact we're in a war, and we say we're in a culture war. War has always ever only been narrative control. War, the primary objective of war is to demoralize your enemy so they will accept your narrative. So in a traditional hot war, you'll turn up with tanks, they'll turn up with tanks. If you win, you're going to get the enemy. They're going to be afraid of you. They're going to be demoralized, and they will accept your narrative regarding your culture, your views, your currency, your religion, whatever it is. If two religions go to war, the objective is to destroy the enemy so they absorb your religion. They accept your religion because they're demoralized. So it's demoralization and control of the narrative. And even in hot wars, the primary objective is to get control over a certain geographical area, to control the populace so you can tell that populace what to think and force them to adhere to certain ideals. We're in a war right now. You just talked about narrative control. That's exactly what it is. They're trying to demoralize us so they can give us narratives that we're forced to accept. They're trying to control, we say about controlling a geographical area with a hot war. Okay, it's not a hot war, but they're trying to control the internet and control information because it's an information war. Alex Jones, InfoWars, he's nailed it. They're trying to control intellectual property and control property online to be able to purport certain narratives to a demoralized populace. We're in a very active war right now.
Yeah.
And just because there's no guns firing, well, there are, but just because you don't see guns firing, you think you're not in a war. You are the subject of a war ongoing. There are two teams fighting right now above your head. And depending on which team wins, depends on the narratives you're going to end up holding and your children are going to end up holding. So this is what's so interesting to me when we talk about masculinity and cowardice. If you understand that a war is going on, surely if you're half a man, you're going to look at the two teams and you're going to choose one and you're going to go join the team you believe in. Only a true coward would sit down and be quiet and say, let the two teams fight it out. And whichever team wins, I'll just agree with them, which is what a lot of people are doing. But surely you should sit and see that this war can't be avoided. Yes, I'm suffering because I ran my mouth too much. Yes, they're going to try and put me back in jail. Probably going to succeed. I'll be back with the cockroaches. Fine. I decided to make that decision. I'll smile knowing that I lived true to my heart. So I'm not a coward. But if you're sitting there being a coward thinking, oh, maybe I can avoid the fight, you're really a fool. Because if you say, I refuse to fight, you don't end the war. You just end your control over the outcome of the war. And all you're doing is handing your entire fate to other people. And perhaps the good guys will win. And then you can sit there and be happy. But you'll know you were a bitch. Or perhaps the bad guys win. And you're going to wish you fought while you had a chance. But you can't avoid this fight. I run my mouth and I'm in a lot of trouble. Cool. But the war is coming for all of us. I don't know why anyone's sitting there saying, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk. You can't escape it. If you don't want to tell the truth, you're just going to end up a casualty of war. You're going to get there anyway. So, and I'll ask you, if we lose this culture war, won't you feel better you tried?
Well, and I don't even think it's a culture war. I think we are actively in war. I don't think back in the day, we used to be an analog war where people sit around and they shoot each other. Yep. That is now the show part of the war. Yep. If you become Instagram famous and you have to show people that you made a lot of money, you got to go rent a Lamborghini and stand and flex in front of it. Otherwise, no one's going to think that you're famous. Yep. That's what the physical war is. We're in a digital age where analog doesn't mean anything anymore. It's messy, it's dirty, it takes a lot of time, and it's hard to clean up. Everything about our life is digital. To think that war is analog is ridiculous. We are actively in a digital war, and we're fighting over propaganda, over information, over influence. Yep. And that's why people that are against the narrative, like you, like me, like guys like Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, even if you don't agree with everything that everyone says, they're actively fighting against the mainstream propaganda. Yep. And that's why I say you're a general. That's why Tucker is a general. That's why Alex Jones is a general. Because even amongst one side of the war, all the generals aren't the same. They all have their nuances, their way of communicating, the way they have to build their armies behind them. Not all generals are the same, but they're all fighting the same side. It's good and it's evil.
But this is my question to and I guess this is a question to the men at home. If you accept a war is ongoing and you accept that it's for the fate of your bloodline. How do you live with yourself as a man if you're not trying to make the good team win? Perhaps we're all going to die. Perhaps we're all going to lose. Perhaps you'll all end up in jail alongside me. But don't you feel like you'd be happier as a man if you stood there and said, I fought my hardest against them, and I tried to save the children and my bloodline and my society and my land and the people I cared about. I tried my best and they got me, but I tried. How are you going to live if you just don't try? And I find it amazing that these people out there who think that, okay, if I avoid the fight and I take the money, or if I avoid the fight and I have the peace and quiet, if I avoid the fight, I have the Super Bowl. How broken are you in your soul to think those things matter more than doing what you know is right? Look at humanity. It's always been men sacrificing their lives for what they know is right. I say I sacrificed my life. I did a little bit of jail and I've lost my money, or some of my money. Boo-hoo. I haven't had to charge at gunfire yet. Yet. But there are men who were braver than I, fighting for ideas they understood less than I understand the current idea. And perhaps their fight wasn't even as important as this one. I would argue there's been times where men took up arms to resist the invading horde. And if they let that horde come in and control their society, they would have been less oppressed than we're about to be. And they sacrificed their life. And we have men here at home going, yeah, well, maybe, I don't know. This mass pandemic of cowardice is how they're getting away with this, which is why I believe, I've said this a bunch of times, I also believe it's the reason they attacked me. They find masculinity so threatening because masculinity protects. I won't sell my soul because I'm a man. That's it. I am the man. And I don't care if I go destitute. I'll knock on your door and ask for a meal, and I'll continue to walk on my way towards wherever I'm headed as a man. I'm not going to sell my soul for money ever. And anybody who's sitting here trying to avoid this battle, all I'll say to you is that there's going to come a time, perhaps when the battle's over and we've lost, that you're going to wish you start saying the right thing. Because I feel like that time's running out. Yeah. I feel like we have a few years left where there's any semblance of freedom and also any semblance of social mobility. It's soon going to be so polarized. I've said this on a podcast a long time ago. There's going to be have-nots and have-yots. It really is going to get there. You have a certain amount of years to get money or get a network or tell the truth before they finally put the schism in the world, and you have the AI serfs who are controlled by their facial recognition, and you have the elites who don't have to listen anymore, and time is running out.
Just a quick break before this video continues. If you haven't signed up for Soju yet, go check it out, soj.oo. It's a social discussion platform that we've created. That's where the community is hanging out. Definitely worth checking out, soj.oo. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. I feel like this year is maybe the most important year. I really do. Yeah. Because if the whole world is watching to see what happens with President Trump, whole world is, because guys, the populist leaders of places like Pakistan who were waking up and they were making a difference and they were improving their condition of life, and nationalism was rising with Imran Khan. Crushed. Yeah. Guys like in Brazil with Bolsonaro, who they were feeling nationalist again. They were defying the establishment, and they were pushing against the COVID agenda, and then crushed. And then now everyone's like, all right, two of the bigger populations on opposite sides of the world, they didn't survive it. Even in Poland and what's going on over there.
Oh, Poland has fallen to the left. That's mind-bending.
They were making it. They were surviving. People were happy. And they just crumbled so fast. Bro. What was it, like 4 years, and boom, it's just like that.
Bro, I'm selling everything I own in Warsaw. I believed in Poland. I put a lot of money in Poland.
A lot of people thought they were the ones in Europe that were going to make the stand. Yep. And if they survive it, there's hope for the rest of Europe. Done. And they didn't. It happened so fast.
And that's what's scary, because Patrick Bet-David, he made a video explaining that, I don't know the exact numbers, 42% of the world population has an election this year. Yeah. Or something like that. There's the largest Muslim country has an election. America has an election. The entire world has elections in the same year. I think it's unprecedented with the number of people who get to vote. And some people see that as a massive opportunity, and I guess it is. But I see that, I'll be honest with you, as a power grab.
Yeah.
I see that as a power grab. I think there's a global power grab that's going to take place this year. I think that everyone who should win isn't going to win. I think that it's going to be the final nail in the coffin for freedom and individual liberty. I think they're going to throw me in a jail cell for a long time for talking too much. I think that anyone else who speaks up is going to start getting thrown in a jail cell. I think the people who understand what's happening are going to be too scared to speak because they're cowards. And I think that once they have absolute control, they're going to implement AI and CBDCs. And I think we're all fucked. That's what I think. And the only answer to that I have found, I want to make this clear as well, because a lot of people ask about my reversion to Islam. The only kind of nations I see which worship anything above money are the Muslim nations. I think that the only nations who sit and say there's something more important than money. No, we will not teach LGBT to children. We don't care about what money you offer us or what sanctions you put on us. That is haram. They seem to be the last people with anything that they worship above money, because if you only worship money, eventually you're going to end up controlled and corrupted. And that's why I think Islam's one of the last resistances to this insanity. And perhaps you can move to Qatar and you can worship God and you can pray 5 times a day like you're supposed to, and you can have a very happy life. But outside of that, I'm struggling to find answers. You can go to Fiji and hide on a tropical island and eat coconuts, perhaps, but not everybody can do that. It's a very small island. It's scary. And I think a huge power grab is coming. And once they cement that power, anybody who tries to talk against it is in a lot of trouble.
It's really scary. And we don't want to fear porn people, but that's the reality of the world we live in right now, is that if they can take down Donald Trump, and they've taken down Imran Khan and they've taken out Bolsonaro, again, these guys were ridiculously popular in their own countries. And they were all taken down for corruption, for taking bribes, for taking a painting. And because they called out and they said in Bolsonaro that he led an insurrection or a violent revolt. And then you see what's happening here in the country, not here because we're in Romania. When you see what's happening
here,
in the United
bro,
States,
trust me, things happen here.
Because I was in the cab coming to this hotel, and we were told him that we were from America, and he's like, "Oh, what do you think about Joe Biden?" He asked me. I was like, "Oh man, I don't think he's awake." And he's like, "Yeah, do you think Trump can win?" Because even people here, they know that if Trump loses, it's over for everybody.
Yep.
He's kind of this last man standing type of deal.
Absolutely.
And now you see $500-600 million in lawsuits against him.
So
do we survive this?
Well, this is the thing that's interesting. So then you have to find answers. So the solutions I've come up with in my mind, of course, are money, because money is power. And I want people to understand that when we talk about how money is the root of all evil. Money is also the root of all good. Money is the vested time and interest of other humans. If you have a bunch of money, you have the stored energy of other people. And I'll give you a very simple example. I have money, so I can get somebody to sweep my floor. I have their stored time and energy in a note or on a bank balance where I can make them sweep a floor for as many hours as I so choose, because I can afford to pay them. It's the stored time and energy of other people. So for evil to be done, it requires the time and energy of humans. And for good to be done, it requires the time and energy of humans. So money is like gunpowder. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. It's like germ theory. You can save people's lives, or you can create a pathogen that decimates a populace. So it can go both ways. Money is certainly an answer, because if you're completely broke, it's hard for you to influence other people and influence the world by extension. So money is super important. And the other thing I think is important is fraternity and brotherhood and living for something larger than just money itself. That's why I said about the Islamic nations live for God. And I think if you look at any period of human history, one of the things that gives me solace in this insanity is that I feel like men have always believed that the world is ending. Because we're looking at it right now saying, society's over, it's finished. And I feel nervous about that. And I genuinely lose sleep about that sometimes. I don't know how people sleep so easily at night watching the Super Bowl. There's times I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, we're fucked. And I can't sleep. But I feel like during the 60s, there were men who felt that way about the hippie revolution. And during World War II, of course, they felt like the world was ending. And I'm sure Vienna felt like the world was ending when the Mongol horde arrived. And I feel like people have always felt like the world is ending. I think if you're a man and you're masculine and you're protective, you're always going to feel like danger is coming. And the world always forms and we continue, and humanity does manage to survive and progress. But it's always been a band of brothers. It's always been masculinity and fraternity which has resisted evil. It's always been the enemy's here. Who's on my team? Here's my gang. Here's my army. Here's my guys. Let's get our swords and let's go fight for it. And I feel like it's also more important than ever that people who are on the right side work together. And Patrick Bet-David said this. He said the leaders are finding the other leaders. And that's true. I think it's more important than ever that we do podcasts together, that other people who agree with us, we do podcasts and we amplify our voices. I think there has to be some degree of unity in the mission. And besides making a bunch of money, because money is power, and besides fraternity for people who are like-minded, I think those are our last chances. Those are the only chances we have. And I do believe we can slow the spread. COVID talk.
Yeah.
We can resist the insanity long enough, at least.
The
for
new
them,
norm.
Yeah. We can resist the insanity long enough, at least, for them to build a new system on the back of this revolution, if there is one, or adjust the current system enough for life to still be livable. One of the things that's kind of interesting is I find, as like being a cultural leader, one of the things that's most interesting about it is whenever I get any hate, which is actually very rare for me. People talk about like the fact that I'm a hated person, but 98% of the internet loves me. I really believe that. I very rarely see hate comments. Very rarely. And I've never met anyone in person who dislikes me. But man or woman. Women love me too. They're like, yeah, you're right. But when I do see some idiot posting something stupid, I sit and say, it's kind of crazy that I'm trying to help him. He's so ignorant and so stupid. He doesn't realize I'm fighting for his freedom. You know, it's kind of like you're trying to drag the horse to water. And they're like, no, you're stupid. It's like, no, you're going to die. You're trying to help the people who dislike you. It's kind of weird. I don't know if you've ever had that yet.
No, it happens all the time. And I tell people, look, whether you agree with my ideas or not, the reality is I'm fighting for your right to have your shit idea.
100%.
I don't agree with your idea. I think you're stupid. I think doesn't make any logical sense. But I'm still fighting for your right to have that idea, to say those things that I completely disagree with. Yeah. I'm still fighting for your right. Yeah. And the people on the other side, they're fighting for their right only. Yeah. I'm fighting for your ability to have those bad ideas. I don't agree with you. You don't agree with me. That's fine. But I'm trying to preserve this idea that we can have competing opinions. Yep. Because only through debate, through discussion, through various of ideas, can the great ideas really form.
Absolutely.
And I don't pretend to be right on everything. I don't want you to agree with everything I say. If anything, please disagree with me.
Absolutely.
Because it shows to me that I'm not living in an echo chamber.
Completely. And you need both sides. You're right. Because equilibrium is always going to be the middle of both sides, right? So like if you have a seesaw, if you want it balanced, you need X amount on this side and X amount on that side. So you shouldn't be afraid of any idea as long as it's open and possible to discuss. It gets scary when you remove one side of the weight and it's not allowed to be discussed. Well, then it gets skewed, right? If we're allowed to openly discuss and openly talk, and I'm allowed to say the things I truly believe and I won't be canceled for it, then I don't fear feminism. Yeah. And I don't fear LGBT. And I don't fear transgenderism. I don't fear any of these people. Sit them down at a table with me and I will decimate them in real time. And I will do it so that everybody understands I am right. Because I know I am right and God knows I'm right. And there's no way they can beat me in an argument because it's pretty fucking simple. I have a dick and you have a vagina. It's done. And I'll say it. Done. But if I'm not allowed to talk, well, that's how they get control. And that's why they censor. And that's why it's so scary. So you're right. We're not afraid of their ideas. We just want to be able to talk openly.
Yes.
They don't want us to talk because they know they're going to lose, which proves they're wrong. Yeah. And they're not even smart enough to look in the mirror and go, well, why am I so afraid of him talking? Well, it's because I'm incorrect. That's the truth of it.
Thanks for watching the clip. If you want to see the full episode, click here. If you want to see more clips, click here.